Good morning, ladies and gents. This is the dawn of a new channel, Roll for Lore, and the fresh start of a new series. On this channel, we take a deep dive and explore the hidden history and lore that has been created for the fantasy setting of Dungeons and Dragons. In this video, I will be covering the prehistory era and the time before the First Age. If that interests you, you've come to the right place, and please, consider hitting like and subscribe so you don't miss out on new videos when they're released. Now, sit back and enjoy the history of Abeir-Toril. I will get to the history of Abeir-Toril soon, but there are some preliminary items to cover. First of which is Ao, a type of deity called an Overgod, who is beyond the normal structure and laws of the crystal sphere, realm space, in which he held dominion. I'll talk more about crystal spheres later on in the video as well, but for now, suffice it to say that they are the spheres of influence that each Overgod or deity has power over. Though Ao was so powerful that even deities and overgods from other spheres were forced to respect him, which was to say he's a pretty big deal. Ao seemed to be the spitting image of mediocrity when he took human form just one time during an event called the Time of Troubles, an event I will also cover later in the video. But during this time, he was also seen as an incredibly tall man who did not appear old nor young, but seemed totally average despite him being as tall as he was, which was an upwards of about 12 feet tall. Quite strange for him to even have intervened at this time, since he had seemed to be kind of a hands-off overgod, all things considered. He left the other deities alone as long as they maintained their status properly. This may seem like he didn't care, but that's not quite the case. Great self-sacrifice was one such example that left a great impression on Ao to the point, in extreme cases, he was known to bring some of those beings back from the dead. Now, this was a knife's edge, as he despised self-destruction, which seems like it could change day to day depending on who you asked. Now, in the grand scheme, it was unknown if Ao was actually omniscient, or if he was just along for the ride just like the rest of us. We can talk about what kind of power Ao wielded that made him so feared and respected. He could theoretically do anything, seeing as how most think he created everything in the cosmos. He held more power than all of the other gods and primordial beings in realm space combined, which is a lot. He has claimed to have created realm space and the gods residing in it, but has not claimed to create the other celestial bodies. Now, unlike other gods who get more powerful the more worshippers they have, Ao operates outside of this usual rule, so to speak, since he did not require worshippers to maintain his power or even livelihood like the gods below him. He did, however, still have followers known as ministers, since they did not get powers like a typical cleric would by worshipping other gods, so they didn't get any spells or the like. They held a more philosophical view as opposed to religious. And that brings us to his shortcomings. I mentioned how he didn't rely on worshippers, but that doesn't mean he couldn't be weakened in some way or another. He relied on having a large number of powerful deities operate under his control, and during the aforementioned Time of Troubles, he angered a lot of those gods in realm space, and that caused some of them to even leave their areas of control and power to go elsewhere. Now, this did cause Ao's power to decrease to the point where Mystra, another important character that we will see many times in the future, who was a waiting overgoddess, could have claimed Ao's position in power over realm space, which was a pretty big deal at the time. But that did not happen. As I talked about before, Ao and the other overgods act more as a supervisor over their respective sphere, deciding if other deities were allowed to enter, who could receive godlike status inside, and even the ability to revive dead gods or ones that had lost their influence. Now, a crystal sphere is, as the name implies, simply a large space in the shape of a sphere that overgods or higher deities have the power to control or operate under. Each sphere was approximately 2 times larger than a solar system that operated around a central star or large planet. The exact reason for the creation of these spheres is largely unknown. Maybe they were created by the deities to protect worlds, or perhaps they even predated the gods and were meant to contain their activities to a smaller area. Ao has claimed to have created realm space, but there are plenty other spheres who have unknown origins. As it is known, each sphere has its own set or pantheon of gods and deities that were all in a pact. They were meant to harbor peace between the spheres, so the deities of one sphere could only intervene when another god had broken its pact first. I know. There was a lot to cover, but now we can finally get to the actual history that we've been waiting to cover. So, Abeir-Toril was an ancient planet in realm space created by Ao, a good while before negative 35,000 DR, or Dale Reckoning, which is the most common calendar in Faerun. On it, there were entities known as primordials. These beings caused great chaos and were opposed by 2 of the first gods on this primordial planet. Selûne, who represents the moon and twilight, and Shar, who represents darkness and loss. Now, Selûne and Shar created Shantae, who represents life and agriculture, alongside the sun to allow newfound life to begin to thrive on this planet. This did not last long, however, as Selûne and Shar summoned the other gods to aid in a war that had been brewing against the primordials. And this is not the last time that we will hear about Selûne and Shar. They're quite important in the future history. Now, this was known as the Dawn War, and would last for countless ages, while life seemed to continue forward on Abeir-Toril, as this war had taken place outside of the planet. During this time, however, aboleths began to emerge and showed their resistance towards the gods as well. These giant beings were worm-like in appearance with gaping maws and writhing tendrils. Not very pretty to look at, to be honest. Now, during the time of the Dawn War, the planet was completely covered in water as one enormous ocean, and this was known as the Blue Age. This was where the relative peace on Abeir-Toril ended, quite abruptly. One primordial fighting in this war, Dendar, the Night Serpent, decided he would devour the sun and plunged Abeir-Toril into utter darkness. The peace time on Abeir-Toril during the Blue Age came to a crushing end, thus beginning the Shadow Epoch. The Shadow Epoch was a great calamity where the lack of heat and light caused the world to freeze and most of the life forms to die. Despite this great catastrophe, the gods and primordials continued waging their war over a now desolate world. Though the gods had some extremely powerful allies, such as Ouroboros, the World Serpent, none were more crucial in the fight than Ubtao, a primordial himself, who gave up a portion of his land and power that he controlled to finally aid their gods in the victory over the primordials, after enslaving and killing many of his own kind. After their triumph, the gods created a new sun that melted the glaciers and revealed a new supercontinent, Ouroboros. This allowed a staggering amount of new life to spring forth, that of which the planet had never seen before, land dwellers. But that, my friends, is a story for another time, when we finally get to the First Age, the Days of Thunder.